Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics here, I am going to be addressing the question of the wussification of D&D and then ask the question or answer the question of when and how did this occur, at least according to my opinion. So some points of clarification here. So this is a response to the RPG Pundit's video, virtually of the same name, and I've watched his video several times, and I, in some ways, agree and disagree as far as the when and how. I think that it was something that evolved over time, and I'm going to go into further detail with that. I'm also making the point to clarify that I was invited by Max Liao of Legion of Myth to accompany him on his live stream this evening, so Friday night at 7 p.m. And he knew that I've been covering second edition, and that in the RPG Pundit's video, second edition became the impetus of this wussification, which I partially disagree with as well. And so he wanted to bring me on tonight to talk about my impressions of this whole thing. Now, unfortunately, or possibly fortunately, I have a prearranged game tonight where I am playing in a Castles and Crusades campaign, and we meet bi-weekly on Fridays. And Friday was the date that was originally shifted from Thursday to accommodate me. So for me to skip out on that, I think would be a pretty dick move, and I'm not going to do that. So what I'm doing instead is I am going to create this video here and talk about my understanding of things and my viewpoint. And then I am going to post this video sometime after Max's live stream. So I don't want to preempt his live stream with this. I am going to instead have this come sometime later on tonight. Probably go live with this sometime around midnight or so, and that will give hopefully. Now Max sometimes goes a real long time on his live stream, so this is going to drop sometime after his, because I do not want to take away from anything that Max is doing tonight. I am probably going to try to sneak some viewing time during my gameplay and kind of multitask between playing my character and actually keeping an eye on what's going on with his thing. So I apologize for Max, because initially I had forgotten that this is the bi-week Friday, and I told him, hey, I'm going to be doing this. So what I let him know that I was going to take a look at, I'm going to do in this video, but like I said, it's going to come later after his live stream. So I encourage you to go to Legion of Myth tonight and check out the live stream. So without further ado, the wussification of Dungeons and Dragons, when and how did it begin? Well, I am going to launch off with the premise that it is not something that you can put your finger on and say, here it is, here is when it had achieved, the full level of wussification. It was something that was gradual, and it certainly did not start with second edition, and it was not completed with second edition. It evolved over time. Now, I am going to start off, and you can see the image here. When I typed in to look for an image to use for this, I typed in the lameness of Dungeons and Dragons. just to see what kind of an image would come up. And there were several that were just Dungeons and Dragons related, and then this image from the 1983 cartoon, and I don't know which exactly episode this was. The cartoon ran from like 83 to 85ish or so. When this came out, came across my view, I was like, yeah, it probably started with the cartoon. As much of a fan as I was with the cartoon then and now, this was clearly designed to mainstream Dungeons and Dragons, to make it more palatable during the Satanic Panic, and to have the appeal to the moms with younger kids, to make it say, no, you see, Dungeons and Dragons is really safe. It's just a game, and it could be just as wholesome as this is, and so on. So if you want to look for the very first nugget of wussifying or taking the edge out of D&D, and in particular advanced Dungeons and Dragons at that time, it would be the cartoon. As I said, as big of a fan of the cartoon I am, this is where it began. All right, but it did not complete its journey towards its wussification, and later on towards its wokeness. So let's go on to some of the other things. And this is based on some of the comments that were in the RPG Pundits video, which I recommend that you check out as well. And some began to argue that it came with Unearthed Arcana. And this is where I think the RPG Pundit started to lay his case out, was that it became wussified when player characters started to become very powerful, and thus lessening the challenge that they faced. Now, he put it with second edition, and I will have a counter to that argument. But in many cases, a lot of the supercharge of character classes came with an Arcana. Now, I don't look at this as being that, oh, well, there it is. That's when it really began, and that's, from then on, it was all downhill from that, because Unearthed Arcana was not official rules. All right, it was all optional. And in many cases, the same thing with second edition that is brought up. It's all optional, or much of it is optional. And so if it's an optional rule, then you have the choice not to use it. And so it really comes down to the dungeon master and the players at the table, how much wussification they want to allow into their game. I don't see getting rid of level limits for demi-humans, or even just watering them down as you do in second edition, as being a true wussification. I don't see mechanically how that takes place either. Character classes are certainly increased in power in Unearthed Arcana. The Cavalier is almost unrunnable in your campaign, because it is so massively powerful, but it is also so one-dimensional that you take a Cavalier off his or her horse, and they become much more significantly reduced in their power. Barbarians were incredibly powerful in the very beginning of the levels, but once they started going to 9 and 10 and above, much of their advantages were kind of lost. And it maintained that they could not use magic weapons and such, so it really did become a real trade-off in power curves. So that I don't see as being a real point in time where you can say, this is it. This is where it this is where it began, and this is where it was completed, or it's never been the same thereafter this, because still optional rules. Now we get to the player's handbook of now this is the revised edition, so this might be different than the original second edition player's handbook. I don't have that edition of it. I never had, so I'm going solely based on this. And a lot of the things that are in here that add to the power of a character is offset by the increasing in the power of the monsters, or at least many of the monsters that they're going to face in here. In one of my videos, I compared the two monster manuals between AD&D First Edition and AD&D Second Edition, and clearly showed where they are significantly more powerful in the Monster Manual 2. All right, Second Edition, I'm sorry. In the Monster Manual Second Edition. And so whatever increases the players got, the player characters got in this, they were balanced by the power boost in this. And so it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other. And so there, I'm looking at it mechanically. Yes, if you include all of the optional rules, then yes, your player characters are in the game system going to be much more powerful and then less challenged. All right, but if you're just using the set rules for the player's handbook and then the monster manual as is for second edition, there's no real differential between AD&D First Edition and AD&D Second Edition, in my opinion. Now, once you get to the splat books, that's where you get a lot more of that change. Now, another thing that the RPG Pundit points to in Second Edition, and I did as well in my video, was that the social and societal atmosphere around Dungeons and Dragons during the Satanic Panic absolutely had an impact on Second Edition. And he mentioned it, and I mentioned it in my video as well. TSR changed the names of demons and devils into different things. They also removed any visuals of either scantily dressed or even nude, demons and devils and such. And they, so they definitely buckled to the pressure of the Satanic Panic. And around the same time, they produced, this here. Previously they produced this here to also combat on the societal and social level the image of Dungeons and Dragons. So that's not as much of a game design and game mechanics transformation. That is a transformation of context. Of presentation and of context, as far as this is a game context that is not as edgy or as in the views of the evangelical Christians at the time, in that big movement, that satanic movement. This is not as devil worshipy and depraved as you thought. All right, and so I understand why they did that, but I think that I think that Gary Gygax and Frank Metzner and others that spoke up about the Satanic Panic while it was happening, they did an incredible job, on in interviews, on news channels, for everybody to see, and in newspaper articles and such, for everybody to read. That I think did a phenomenal job of pushing back on the on those outsiders outside of the industry, and it was a time when the industry itself pushed back. So TSR pushed back on these ideas. You don't see that kind of thing occurring today. Today, when there is a social, societal, challenge to what a game system is doing, oftentimes you'll see that the developer, or seller of the product will buckle to that pressure, no matter how small that pressure is, and and then they will alter it, they'll change it. TSR and Gary Gygax and their crew did not do that at the time. They pushed back and they said, no, you're just wrong, and this is what it really is, and so forth. So that's a difference there, and second edition kind of buckling on that nomenclature part of it. I can see where you could say, yes, the game company became wussified in that they buckled to pressure to make those changes. But game mechanically wise, it really still didn't change all that much. Yes, they removed assassins and they changed the thief class to being called the rogue, and they changed, um, fighters, at least as a core, to to warrior, and then fighters were included in there, and paladins were included within the warrior class as well. As I said, assassins were completely removed, and thief was obscured under rogue, and then they also removed half orcs for whatever reason, because I just don't know why they removed half orcs, because you didn't even have that whole, or half orcs are a racist trope at that time. I think it had more to do with orcs were seen as monsters, and so if you had monster play in Dungeons and Dragons, that was a social and societal taboo as well. So they removed half orcs from the playable races up until the Splat books came out, and they kind of reversed some of those things as well. Again, I don't see the elimination of level limits for demi-humans being an issue of wussification. I think it was just with the changes of the game mechanics, and the desire to give RPG Pundit credit for this as well. A lot of the changes of second edition were meant to basically distance and take Gary's name off of the product, and so both in essence and in actuality, right? So it was meant to deny Gary Gygax any claim to second edition, as far as being I don't mean financial claim to it, although that was probably part of it too, but they didn't want him to have any influence, or be granted any kind of an influence on it as well. In other people's minds, that, oh, well, Gary Gygax still influenced AD&D second edition. They tried to get away from that. Now, my posit is that it's not so much as important as it is in the game mechanics time, and changes that were taking place over time, and the perception of, like the cartoon did, that, no, this is still a kid's game, and all of that. I think it really came to a head when they started to, and this is very, very early on or very late stage of TSR when it was sold to Wizards of the Coast, and it starts with the movie. It starts with Dungeons and Dragons 2000. So that movie, and I picked it up in the commentary of the documentary of the video, and I'm just going to show you the one line that I think truly opens the door for that wussification, and then that wussification is going to carry itself through both mechanically and conceptually. All right, starting with third edition and moving forward. So let me show you that clip, and then I'll be right back with you here.
People get confused. They say, but I don't understand. It's a game. How do you win? You don't win. The point is the game is a metaphor for life. There's no destination. The fun of the journey is the whole point.
You have the shared life with your friends where you as a group of people have brought your characters together, and your characters together have faced these challenges, and you have that sort of shared saga. And that's one of the ways that characters grow from being a set of stats to being a sort of person that feels real the way a character in a movie or a book feels real.
Nice. D&D is a great training ground to make people better human beings. It teaches all of the values that we want our kids to learn.
And so, oh, sorry, let me
Reloading.
get that.
Let me
Okay. Once they start defining it as not a game, and this is a way to make you a better human being. This is a way to, take from your collective experiences and bring it out into the real world. And then by doing that, you also open up the real world to be brought into your experience at the table through Dungeons and Dragons. That is, I think, where you get this sense that, well, I'm playing something where there is no winner, which means that there is no loser. And so if there is no winners or losers, it's just about the experience, then my character's story can never end until I say that it ends. And the challenges can never be met with the ultimate consequence of a character death. And not only can't my character die, but since there is no winning in Dungeons and Dragons, then there is no losing in Dungeons and Dragons, which means that you have no setbacks. You have no, at least it's not designed that way. To have these setbacks, it's going to then begin to evolve where the characters become even more and more powerful, and challenges that they do face have to be balanced to their abilities and balanced to their skill level. And so you should never have an instance where the characters are facing a total party wipe due to no fault of their own. All right, and I know that there's probably a lot of a feeling like, oh, you should never let a total party wipe occur because of bad dice rolls. It's not a game, it's an experience, right? So dice is what gamifies the experience, right? It adds that randomness to it. It adds those consequences to it, and they are completely out of the control of the players. So when you start going down that path of saying, well, there is no winners and losers, there's nothing but advancement and victory here for the players, and the only time that they're willing to allow their characters to die is when they choose for it to happen. And we hear this all the time. We hear this when people are talking about this specific thing of character death, and a game master, a dungeon master, has to get the permission of the player for his character or her character to die, and that's the wussification. All right, so this didn't begin and meet its full level of wussification in one moment. It took time, for it to take a hold. But in my opinion, that statement in 2000 really does hit it home. And I don't think that there was ever a return in game design after 2000 to pre-2000. All right, not within Wizards of the Coast with its 3rd edition, 3.5, 4th edition, or 5th edition. None of them made a return back to pre-3rd edition mindset of gaming. It was all about the story gaming, and it was all about the experience is more important than the gamification of it, of the game mechanics of it. Now, 5th edition players, a lot of people will describe 5th edition players as being, well, they're more so to the core of the books, like raw, than any other group. Like they will argue that this is no, it's in the book, I should be able to do this, and they will rage quit other types of game sessions where they're told, no, you can't do that. And that's why they have such a hard time transitioning to the OSR, for example, is that they're so used to game masters and dungeon masters having that mindset of there's no winners or losers, and the player character's story is the true goal. That when they go to the OSR, and it's very differently, it is very old school mentality of how you run an OSR game, that and simply calling it a game is sometimes offensive to those more modern players that are looking at it and saying, no, this is a game experience, or this is an experience. They don't even like calling it a game anymore. They don't even like calling it a dungeon master or a game master, because they believe that mastery implies both a patriarchal connection, but also that it implies that that the characters, or even the game master, has a mastery of something, which means that not everyone can be a master, and so it further stratifies the experience as well. So that wussification, I think, did evolve over time, but I think the true turning points, and really the true turning point, was when the game designers adopted the philosophical idea that this is not a game, that this is an experience, and it's an experience meant to be taken into the real world, and thus opening up the door for real world experience to be brought into the game experience. And that's, I think, where you end up with the wussification of D&D. and other game systems where they allow that kind of a thing. So that's where I would have gone in the discussion on Max Liao's live stream through Legion of Myth. I'm pretty sure he runs it through Legion of Myth. Max, I wish I could have been there to actually lay this out during your stream, but this, consider it as a response video. And if anything really comes up in the stream, because I will watch it afterwards, that kind of refutes this, I will make a response to the stream to actually address any of those things. But for the rest of you, I hope you enjoyed Max's stream. I hope you saw it. If you hadn't, definitely take a look at that. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will continue to do my videos upcoming for both AD&D Second Edition and some of the other games that I've been looking at. So Shadow Dark, and my newest one was Corpse Kings, which a lot of people really like that video. So I will do another deeper dive into Corpse Kings now that I've seen as much response to that as I have seen, and then I'm going to get back to some Castles and Crusades later on next week. So looking forward to doing that as well. So thanks for joining. I hope you liked this video. Again, this is going to be posted later on this evening, probably about 5 hours after the live stream has begun, and so hopefully it's taken in that proper context. So everyone have a great day. Take care.